You shouldn't store it here.
Where'd Kevin go?
He's in the hall.
Oh, sure.
Ready? All right, this time we'll say pledge. Pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America and to the
republic, which is
under God, indivisible, with liberty. I want to thank everybody for coming to the January 4th, 2023 utility meeting for Columbia County and Town of Fort White. This time we'll ask, if he will give us an update on the Fort White water tank replacement.
Yes, sir. Fort White water tank replacement, the tank has been ordered. The initial hold PO has been cut and, drawing PO has been made and so they're still on task for late February, the 1st of March to have that tank replaced.
Late February, 1st of March.
Yes, sir.
Any other issues, if you know about?
Not with the tank, yes. The meter, go on number 2, meter replacement, it's still moving forward. All the meters are actually secured. Now they're waiting for some of the modems and stuff that back up the meter, that go with the meter. All that has been secured for the most part, and that is still moving forward to be completed by mid-March.
So as part of that, we talked to the district about funding some computer equipment and software that helps with the home meter program. They agreed that the computer equipment would be fundable, but software or billing, they still haven't bought into, so that's still out there with a question mark. We may have to find alternative funding for that.
What kind of budget are you looking at on that funding? Do you know?
I think it was what, 38,000?
38,000. Yeah.
38,000.
And that's for just for the billing software?
Right. They said basically the meter reading software and the meter, all that stuff, absolutely part of the project. Computer equipment that's needed to run all the stuff on, the servers and stuff, all can be considered part of the project. The utility billing, they're having trouble seeing how it would reduce water consumption or affect water consumption. So
Let me ask you a question.
We fund it some other way.
This software now, when we purchase it, I know it'd be for all the meters we have in place now, because we're replacing the ones in Ellisville and Fort White. But is it compatible with other types of meters in the future if we do something different somewhere else?
Yes, sir.
So it can adapt to other.
Yes. So the meters come with its own meter reading software. So that's all part of the grant. This is just the billing portion.
So this software should be functional for quite a while. Once we purchase
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It comes with a 20-year warranty.
20 year.
So,
So that's a one-time cost for maybe a 20-year.
yes.
The lift stations in Ellisville.
Just give you an update. The lift stations, we have installed the vented control panels. So both have been upgraded and see how that works out. We just purchased a new lift station pump and have the other one in the shop for rebuild to have a spare. So now our lift stations will have a spare.
I would like to see some diagrams and pictures of how they retrofitted those control panels.
Absolutely.
And
Yes, sir.
now, and another question I have, do they have a hole somewhere to draw air into the control panel other than through the pipes coming out of the lift station?
Yes, sir.
To get the gas out, or?
Yes, sir. So on the bottom side of the panel, and like I explained earlier, it's very similar to a computer fan, but you have it where it draws in, small set of louvers, it draws in, it pulls out on the side, upper corner, so you've got a constant flow, and that has louvers as well. So it just keeps water from going in.
So you're pulling fresh air in all the time?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Oh, okay. And now, we had talked about that 2 meetings ago about how these vented control panels are gonna work and get rid of sewer gas. Wastewater treatment plant, Ellisville?
They have done all the locates, everything, they had potholed a few piping. Now we are waiting for them to give us a updated footprint. There's 2 different design possibilities. And when they give us the updated footprint, I will pass it along Mr. Kirby and Mr. David to see what direction. Now, Arcadis, Kyle and Sean at Arcadis and SGS, I told them that from a monetary standpoint, the budget's not going to increase. So however they want to, we can adapt that footprint without increasing our financial mitigation, so be it. So they're looking at that. It should be this week, and if that's the case, then I'm anticipating in about a week and a half that will be wide open. Everything's ordered, everything's on order, everything's coming in, electrical panels, cabinets, blah, blah, blah. So the only thing that's on a small back order is the VFDs.
Okay, now you said they're looking at the footprint. How did they get a price on this project without having all that in place already?
Well, they have the original footprint, but some of the value engineering that they're looking at, that now is available from the time of the original, that they're looking at possibly, instead of making it a 5-foot fence line, make it a 15-foot fence line, so you can you can put an isolation valve in between the new plants, this, that, and the other. So there's a few things that they can do, but it has to stay within the budgetary means. So.
Now, is this, I know this is for the first upgrade. Are we looking at the second upgrade? Because I know we're going to be maxed out with this upgrade we're doing now.
Yes, sir.
Basically, as soon as we get done with it.
So the third expansion from 50 to 75, we have it budgeted as far as permitting and design. So once we get done with the 50, we'll go move right directly into the permitting and the design portion.
I think Mr. Chairman, I think it goes right back to the thought process of the innovation. The discussions we've had is it subject to grant funding, or do you find another funding source? Cart, horse, the egg and the chicken theory, right? So you've got the fund. What did you say in the synopsis? You go from 25 to 50, you have enough funds available to permit and design from 50 to 75. As indicated, by the time you complete your 50, it would be apparent, assuming growth continues, that you'll need to go right on to construction for 75. At that time, the decisions will be made. If grants are not captured, then we'll have to identify another funding source, or obviously stop growth. That would be a choice made at that time.
Right. Okay. Can you want to give this board a little update on what DOT is looking at doing it elsewhere?
Sure. So at the last Board of County Commissioners meeting, we basically partnership with the Department of Transportation. We're doing some major improvements at Bascom, Norris, and 247. Based on the 40% inflation cost, et cetera, we agreed, the board agreed to do a $2.5 million contribution to that intersection improvement at Brantford Highway and Bascom Norris. Expand additional lanes, et cetera, to eliminate that congestion. In turn for that, there is a move for truck parking in District 2, semi-truck parking. So it just so happened, we have a safety issue at 238 and US 41, they're a major intersection at Love's.
Mm-hmm.
So they married that truck parking grant to the safety issue. They're getting started in the month of January with the permitting and design, and what that's going to eliminate, basically provide at no cost to the county other than O&M, ownership and maintenance of once upon completed. Basically a huge signalized intersection with big improvements and a service road basically going right on the north side of Love's, right? A service road going there, and I believe it was 74 truck parking spaces it provides. When everything's said and done, that's a $30 million improvement. And it's moving forward immediately. I've been told by DOT officials, we will see actual construction crews out there between 2 to 2.5 years, but the triggers being pulled on all of that. In my humble opinion, we basically made a $2.5 million investment for about $38 million worth of improvements. What does that do in the grand scheme of things? I think it just opens that next corridor up Ellisville up, which goes back to the comment made earlier. If right now we're going from 25 to 50 on the sewer business, common sense tells you by the time you get the last boat nailed, you'll need to bump up. Again, it's going to be an ongoing process. I don't think you will ever say, well, we're good. I think the challenge will be for this team and BOCC team is obviously everybody feels like Ellisville is very important or they wouldn't be doing what they're doing today. I think it's gonna come down to the finance and grant availabilities, if we're willing to find out another funding source when that time comes, if the grants are available. Pretty much summed it up.
A lot of exciting things fixing to happen at Ellisville over the next few years, sounds like.
Actually, I'm glad when they get the traffic light up there.
It's a big improvement.
I mean, you can sit there for 20 minutes some days.
Yeah. Especially with all the trucks coming out of Love right there.
Yeah, exactly.
They call it a truck improvement parking grant, but in reality, it felt perfect.
Right. Oh, yeah.
It worked together.
Yeah, I mean, you can literally, I mean, you can be up at the top of the hill on 238 some days, just sitting there waiting. So. Yeah.
We appreciate DOT stepping up to the plate. That's great. Hey, let's talk about Mason City. Where we at on that?
Mason City, we've been struggling with some micro air intrusion in that pumps. We've had a couple different manufacturers come out and look at it. It still seems to be an issue. So now we're moving forward with pulling each individual pump, checking the downspouts, checking everything, and if necessary, putting in new pumps. So we kind of exhausted all our simple preventative and predictive maintenance that could be done without pulling it. So now we're at the point where we're going to have to pull the pumps. They should be out next week.
Now, is the county operating this or is Fall Ridge County?
All that's your county.
County is operating this. Are we looking at the option maybe in the future of running water from Ellisville to Mason City, our water system there?
Yes, sir. It's been looked at.
So right now, I mean, we are providing water, but we had some problems
With the individual well,
with individual well. Well, David, I know you want some direction from this board on the utility rates and backup material has been brought up, some of the board members. So I just want to say, me and you did have a conversation about this and you want to kind of get the direction of the board and then you'll get all the information available for that. Now what David, go ahead, Dave, I'll let you tell us.
Okay, well, we talked about it. There were still some questions out there. So we weren't able to get you the data and the numbers that you needed prior to this meeting. So based on the direction this board goes, we'll get all those numbers for you. We can call a special meeting if you want, or we can present it next month's meeting. But I thought we could talk about philosophically where we want the rates to go, what we can live with. And what I was looking at was a possibility philosophically of let's just saying, if everybody agrees, just set all the residential rates at the Fort White rate. So Ellisville would be raised to the Fort White level, Fort White would stay the same. That would be a good starting point. So then everybody's on the same residential rate. On the commercial rate, and Stacy can talk about this as well, the structures of the two commercial rates are so different. In Fort White, you've got a single rate for commercial, but then you have escalating charges as they use more and more water. So as they use more water, the rate goes up. Sometimes it's called a conservation rate because you're trying to push people to not use as much water. In Ellisville, you don't have that. So you don't have that block rate structure. You just have a single rate structure, but it's based on the size of the meter that commercial has. Because obviously the bigger the meter, the more water you're going to consume, therefore you would pay the higher rate. I would propose, if the board agrees to it, let's gradually raise the Ellisville commercial rates till they're close to the Fort White commercial rates. And then we can make a single rate for both. But right now, they're just too far apart. The negative impacts, just drastically changing the Ellisville rates to the Fort White rates, or conversely, the Fort White rates to the Ellisville rates is extreme. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
But all this assumes, once you set those rates, then you immediately go out for a rate study. And have somebody tell us what our rates should be.
White has been through this, I mean, talked about this in the past 2 years about rates. I mean, we have been through rate study after rate study after rate study, it seems like. And we finally, we're in competition with towns like Trenton, Newberry, smaller areas like that. And that's where our prices are based off of. I mean, and we have talked about this until, yes, sir.
Well, go ahead and finish.
Oh, no, I was just going, we've talked about this till we're blue in the face in Fort White. I mean, the rates, we finally got them where they're at. And I mean, we've had some backlash, don't get me wrong, we have. But for a majority, I mean, we're pretty much set in Fort White.
Well, and one thing that we are bound by, and that was part of the agreement when we took Fort White. They have an increase slated already on certain times you have to increase, and that's with the Florida Water. Go ahead.
There's one thing that I've really studied on, and I think whoever made a comment, we have a terrible tendency of not doing anything for a while and then slamming it.
Yeah.
And I think if you want to comment, I think that progressive increase as time goes on is very important.
Yeah.
And a very wise man made a comment to me after the last meeting, we didn't build Rome in a day, we're not going to build this in a day. So originally, we come in here at the last meeting and had conversation about what it would take to make the utility whole. Politically, I just don't know that that's reasonable. So you got to take baby steps. But I think the biggest thing to take under consideration with this advisory board is to ensure that we do this on a tippy-toe basis, that you ease into it and don't get behind with it because people do not comprehend huge increases.
Just made it.
I just wanted to, I guess let everybody know, all of our water's coming from groundwater, which is water use permits from the Water Management District. One of their requirements is you got to have a conservation program. The conservation rate is part of that program typically. Don't have to be, but it typically is. So that may influence the way you go here. As we grow, that's going to become more and more important, more and more of an issue with the district to make sure that we're doing everything we can to conserve water. So with the system you're going with as far as the metering and all that, everybody initially thinks that's real complicated to do, but with that software and with that metering system, that's not that complicated to do. Those are coded that way and it goes right to the system and it's easy to handle. So just something to think about as you're making that decision moving forward.
Well, we would keep the conservation rates on the Fort White side until Ellisville got close. But the implementation of the conservation rates in Ellisville had some customers going up $200,000-$300,000 a year. And we didn't feel that was.
Oh, no, I understand you don't want to just slam the door on them, so you got to figure out how you're going to implement that. I thought you were talking about just doing away with the conservation rate.
No.
Okay.
Because you're right, we can't. That is a big impact on your larger utility users.
So David, with our discussion, if we decide which way we want to head, the direction we want to go, basically you was going to come back at the next meeting with kind of a layout of how you see it.
If you give us a philosophical direction of how you want us to structure the rate move, and if you want a rate study included, which I would strongly recommend.
Yes.
We'll come back we'll run the actual numbers. And I'll put that in your packet for your consideration next time.
I mean, me personally, I think this would be the best avenue to go down to start and let's go ahead and get the ball rolling. But I agree with Mr. Kirby, you do it, and get everybody at the same rate, how do you go?
Then give us your philosophical insight one more time. You was wanting to.
Okay, so right now, Fort White rates are significantly higher than Ellisville rates.
On which side, residential, commercial?
Well, commercials aren't even comparable, so strictly on the residential side. So we're saying hold Fort White constant, don't do the next increase that you were talking about, and bring Ellisville up to where Fort White is. So that basically everybody's at one rate. And then if we do the incremental rates that Fort White approved in the future, it would affect everybody.
Ellisville falls.
Ellisville fall. There won't be an Ellisville rate. It'll just be a utility.
Oh, right.
And that's what we were shooting.
Get out on the residential side, that means Fort White residents won't receive any increase in their bill until we come back with the rate study that says where we need to be. On the commercial side, you've got Fort White rate studies, which are based primarily, the utility customers you have there are all smaller size meters. They're smaller size commercial venues. They have the conservation rates, which means the more water they use, the higher their rates get. And it makes sense. On the Ellis's side, you don't have conservation rates. It's a lower rate and it's based on the size of the meter. So your larger customers, like your truck stops, pay a higher rate or a different rate because they have the bigger size meter and it adjusts for their consumption. To suddenly put them on the Fort White rates means some of them are going to go up beyond reasonable. So we're proposing to leave Fort White commercial rates as they are, and take the Ellisvilles and increase them. Sounds like a lot. We're looking at 25 to 50%, which dollar-wise is not a lot, but percentage-wise sounds like a lot. 50% of a penny is, very little. And just keep raising the Ellisville commercial rates until they're similar to Fort White's, and then adopt a unified rate structure for both at that point.
So basically, Ellisville would reflect Fort White's commercial and residential rate.
We would be bringing Ellisville towards Fort White rates. Yes.
What kind of timeframe are you talking about doing this?
That would be up to the board.
David, there was another question you brought forth to me that we were talking about too. And I think that might be something that Fort White needs to put on their agenda, and maybe the county needs, the Board of County Commissioners needs to put on their agenda how they want to do the utility rates. Do they want this board to vote to set the utility rates? Or do they want to send it to Fort White and send it to the Board of County Commissioners to approve the utility rates? And that's something that both boards probably would have to vote on if they want this committee to vote on it, or the individual boards vote on it.
Yeah, so right now, the way it's set up, the county can't set Fort White rates. Fort White can't set the county's rates. So if there's going to be a rate agreement that you guys agree on, we have to take it back to both boards. Right now, both boards are together. 5-6 years from now, who knows how the two boards will be. What if the two boards don't agree on the rate structure that this committee recommends? How do you want to handle that? So that's something we need to start looking at, and how do we implement that legally?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I think, the whole intention for this board is to make recommendations. Legally, can you bind the different parties to it? No. They, Fort White have to vote on it, approve it, but I would think that the recommendation will carry considerable weight.
I think that's a question for the attorneys, but I think according to how you set this board up, I think you could probably, if you got the approval through both boards, you could make the decisions right here on this board if you wanted to.
Yeah.
But that's something we need to look at and get some answers. But I just wanted to bring it up because me and David was discussing that, and I wanted the board members to know that was a question we had. How I thought maybe I thought the mayor might be here today, but he had other commitments he couldn't get out of. So maybe David could take it back to Town of Fort White and talk to them, talk to their board, and maybe report back at the next meeting how they feel about it. And that's something we'll talk to the Board of County Commissioners about, before the next meeting, how they would like to handle that. Also, I want to add, Commissioner Williams is on the board now, or the utility board. He has the flu. He couldn't be here today. So he really wanted to be here for this meeting, but I talked to him earlier to make sure he was aware of the meeting, and he sounded pretty bad. So he might not make it to this county commission meeting tomorrow. Don't sound like it. So we have to see. He's trying to get rid of it.
If this committee recommends something, say unanimously, you've got two Fort White people and you only need one more
One more vote.
one more vote
Yeah,
to.
and that's what I'm saying, so, yeah. Yeah.
And that-
That was what I thought the intention of the board before, the reason we set it up that way.
Yeah,
To have it that way. So-
right.
Yes. To go back to each committee.
Well, I mean, basically, each committee would have a representative on this board.
Right.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and we would go back and report to our committee.
And that's something that I think, the Board of County Commissioners, how they feel about it, how Fort White feels about it, we can do it either way, you know, but, that does put more people in the, I guess, making decisions, you know what I'm saying, so. Make the process longer, make the process longer also, you know what I mean? But I say, I'm okay either way, I just want to bring that out, because me and David had discussed it, talked about it, and I wanted to bring it up so we can get maybe, get information from both boards and see how they feel about it, how they would like to proceed with it. So. I guess we'll get a report, we'll put that on the agenda next week and or next month, I think.
Will be the third Monday or Tuesday.
And David, you gonna bring us back something to look at? with
Yeah, the numbers will be
figures, with
in
numbers.
Stacy's agenda packet.
Okay.
We want to make sure you have time to digest the numbers before.
And I'll coordinate with you, Dave, and get some information to take them out. Be prepared for that. Present.
If you need me to be there, Stacy and I were happy to go.
Yep.
I mean, that'll be fine. I mean, I'll coordinate with y'all before then. So.
Anybody else have anything to add? Any update on the Fort White water line? Or the well field?
Well, the well field, we, were just talking this week, Stacy and I, they've been trying to, get the well developed and cleared up, by pumping it, but, they've been having one little issue after another, and hopefully by next week, they'll be able to do that. They had some problems with, some damage to some of the power lead, from relocating the pump a couple of times now. They got that straightened out. Then they ran into some generator issues. They weren't getting the voltage they needed. So they're looking at that now. Hopefully, realistically, by next week, Scott tells me that they expect to be able to run the well, get it cleared up, draw some samples and get them submitted.
So we'll have some information on that.
And then
next week.
hopefully the lab will give us their result. I can't remember if he said 6 weeks or 8 weeks. It seemed like longer time than I thought it should be, but maybe they're backed up like everybody. So I would say probably, hopefully by mid or late February, we may have some water quality results.
What about Fort White? I seen some of y'all's one project truck down in Fort White before when I left. Are y'all still surveying down there? Or?
Let's take some additional data and all that we can talk about.
Yeah, I'm not sure. When was this? 2 weeks ago? Last week? Not last week.
What's that?
You said the truck's down there doing survey.
Oh, this morning. They were down this morning.
I'm sorry, but I don't know what they're doing down there. I haven't even seen my surveyor this morning yet. The water line is progressing, not quite as far along as I had hoped it was at this point, but now that we're back from our holiday break and we're all exhausted, refreshed. And we're moving forward. We've been, I think it's probably safe to say, we've kind of been talking about the January, February timeframe to have bid documents finished up. At this point, I think it's safe to say maybe by the end of February, we'll have bid documents ready to hit the street if we don't have any hurdles that we run into between now and then. So that's progressing, and then we're also progressing, although we're still in the 30% stage, it's been a secondary focus, but the phase 1 wastewater system for Fort White collection and treatment and disposal. So those projects are slowly but steady moving along.
Did you want to talk about anything about the plant at school or anything?
Well, I haven't talked to Mr. Gaylord since yesterday, so I haven't really got with him to get any definitive numbers or anything that, possibility of the county taking over.
They need to be softening their stance a little bit on that, though. Yeah, they had a good conversation on it, so.
Yes,
Maybe we,
One thing I would like to bring up is, I think me and David discussed it. Could we get the town, because right now, technically, the town is over the wastewater facility, project in Fort White. It's not part of the interlocal agreement per se. So we would need the town to kind of give us a direction if the county could be the proprietor for the town in this.
So what happened was we entered into the interlocal agreement on water, the water utility. We proposed an interlocal agreement on wastewater. We proposed an interlocal agreement on both water and wastewater. That's when Connie was the town clerk. Whatever happened, the other two didn't ever get executed. They just didn't. So all we have is the interlocal agreement on the water.
And I do plan on being at your council meeting because I told Mr. Travis, your son, I would try to start making as many as I possibly.
If you guys might as well plan on being at our next meeting, if we need to get this addressed, we can go ahead and get this taken care of at our next.
it needs to be on your agenda, though.
Yeah.
Needs to be on your agenda. Who's doing your agenda now? Do you know?
That's the mayor. I mean, I'm just a councilman.
Bill, are you still working with the town?
No, I completed what I was doing as a consultant some time ago, but it's still helpful if they ask me to help them. But I think Greg people.
We just need to make sure we are on the agenda for the next meeting on this.
What's happening with the agendas there is the mayor is getting with Arelis and they simply produce the agenda. And I think she sends it to Connie and asks Connie to look at it. I believe that's what's happened in the past.
David, can you, no, I'm sorry, Carl.
Just an afterthought on, what you said about the Fort White rates. If maybe we can ask David to get that information and bring it back to our next meeting here.
So we have all that.
Right. You do
Yeah,
have
they
that?
should already have all that information.
David's got all that.
You know,
But we can bring it all, he's gonna bring all that back with backup material.
okay.
And
You
they-
just heard
he
you,
just want-
I didn't hear it.
Yeah.
That would actually be in our interlocal agreement with it, David.
And you also had that study done by, Florida Water, and it's in there.
Yep.
It was like, forget how much percent every year for the next 5 years.
Yeah, they figured in our percentage increase and everything.
You actually adopted it.
Right, yep. I mean, we've already adopted that, so.
Great. Has there been any discussion on what NFMIP will, how that will affect any of these as far as the rates go, or are we gonna handle them separate? Are we gonna make them similar, or?
We've not had that discussion because we're not sure what, when that'll be ready online and have customers. We're anticipating it'll be online end of next year.
All right. Well, I know the final rate, but I mean, do you think you want to make them,
I think the board directed us that ultimately they just want one rate countywide.
countywide?
That would include NFMIP.
Now, with that being stated, that's going to be residential and commercial. And if we have industrial at the NFMIP, that's where the rate study that we're hoping to transform will allow us to get not only residential and commercial, but possible industrial rates for our water system. So it could be, a useful tool.
Well, you could still potentially have mixed out there in FMIP.
Because we do have that residential
We
component.
got multiple uses out there, so.
So, yeah, we want to work on those rates. I guess, we want to be consistent countywide. I would say we can start off with those rates where we want to be though, at our end, because that's all brand new out there. We don't have any existing customers. So you can start that rate at where our end result needs to be. and we need to figure out what that would be, you know, what our end result would need to be. So, I would start that, right at the, just like it's new, I mean, where it needs to be at the start.
Multiple rates then? You'd have multiple rates again?
No. Well, you would just start North Florida Mega Industrial Park off where our end goal is
Right.
going to be with our rate, which water, it sounds like residential is said. What we're worried about, what we're working on really is trying to get them together is the commercial rate, if I, the way I'm listening here. We would start there, we would start at North Florida Mega Industrial Park commercial rate off, where we're trying to get everybody up to, whichever one we're trying to get everybody up to. Is that,
Well, what Stacy,
but I mean, that's down the road a ways. I mean, we're talking about it now, but I mean, that's, we don't even have a plan out, water plan out there yet. We just still drilling wells, but, and that's yet to be determined where that end result needs to be, I guess.
well, I think Stacy was suggesting whether you would need to decide, do you want it commercial rates or do you want a separate category for industrial rate?
Yeah.
And that industrial rate, if you create it, would apply again to all.
I think Stacy probably needs to bring something to us and educate us on that a little better before we make that decision.
Well, that brings up another question, what's gonna classify as commercial, what's gonna classify as industrial?
Yeah, you come up with that.
Speak up a little louder. We can't trouble hearing you over here.
I'm sorry, I said that brings up another question, is what's gonna be classified as commercial, what's gonna be classified as industrial, where are you gonna draw that line at? You're gonna get some, if it's cheaper, some down here don't qualify for the higher rate.
I would think zoning would clarify
Only
that.
our meter size, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, naturally, if you got a 6-inch meter, you don't.
You're big.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Okay, I want to make sure I understand. We have agreed here, and he's gonna bring all the backup information. We're gonna follow suit theoretically with the full White residential side. Right? Now, we understand going into that, we're gonna take baby steps, we're not gonna capture our cost. But in the same hand, you made a comment, we need to sit in a motor park at the real rate. Those rates are considerably different.
That's,
I just want to make sure that caught me off guard. If we're gonna have a countywide uniform rate, because the rate that we're currently at, what David was talking about earlier, does not capture, we're going off the deep end collector right here.
So here where I was going. Right now, we're trying to get Fort White and Ellisville on commercial rates. And we're talking about doing that over a period of time.
Right.
If we don't have that done, by the time we've got customers at North Florida Mega Industrial Park on the water system, which I think we probably will have, we need to, what we're trying to get Ellisville up to or Fort White up to, commercial, wouldn't you, because you're not gonna be at the same rate anyway with commercial, if you're still trying to get one up to the other.
Right, you're trying to take.
When you're trying to get the one up to, you start North Florida Mega Industrial Park at that rate right then.
We're trying to catch Ellisville up to Fort White.
Right, exactly.
We have to take baby steps so it doesn't appear to be a grand slam.
right.
And then if you're gonna try to blend that.
But you don't want to start North Florida Mega Industrial Park less than what Fort White already
Oh,
is.
absolutely not.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but
Yeah.
do you want to start it at 50% more?
Right, yeah.
Well, yeah, that might be something we need to look at. Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Right, yeah.
If you're gonna say you're gonna go countywide uniform, you're gonna be in the red right out the gate again.
I think Mr. David there with the industrial rate, I think you got room to work in there because that's a net new classification.
Yeah.
And to the gentleman back there, how you gonna differentiate that? I think that's.
With that, you setting that rate, am I correct? That's what we do, a rate 34 and set that rate, right?
Yes, sir.
But Mr. Chairman,
You don't have industrial rate though.
We can include it in the rate study.
I get a question. When you did y'all study to come up where y'all are at today, what did you compare neighboring counties like and similar size towns?
Didn't FRWA do that for y'all?
Yes.
Florida Rural Water.
It was ready to be recent.
What Florida Rural Water does, they do that, but they also get the operational cost as best they can from the town.
and evaluation of the utility structure itself
Correct.
and the maintenance costs, preventive, predictive, the entire.
I got looked at that for 2 heads last time. We did that.
And they look at future capital investment as well, of what they need to get to, and then that determines what the rate is. But you always want to compare it to see what you are relative to what everybody else is.
Sure.
But, you know, bottom line, at the end of the day, is really whatever our operational costs are to cover that, plus whatever expansion costs are.
And Greg's right about that. I mean, had we been in the red trying to keep up with, say, Trenton or Newberry, we'd have to increase our rates more. I mean, we can't keep going in the red. I mean, hence why we're sitting here today.
Right.
I mean, me as a Fort White representative, that's why we're here today. You know,
We were in a failure, so we had to figure out plan B quick. And, you know.
Did the study result in a significant increase?
Yes.
It was. I mean, I don't know what percentage right off the top of my head, Kevin, but we got a lot of backlash off. I mean, we had
a couple of businesses closed over this. I mean, from where we never charged tap fees. If you didn't have city water, fine, we didn't charge you. But now it don't matter. If you're in the city limits, you're getting a tap fee.
The county would have never got involved with the residential rates and the current, I'm assuming the state of current,
They would have increased, yes.
would that have sustained the O and M and everything, or is it still in the red?
As far, I mean, with the maintenance and everything, I don't see how the city could sustain it by themselves. I mean, without grants. I mean,
It would have covered the O and M costs that were captured by Florida Rural Water, not necessarily the total costs.
Not true cost.
Right.
Yeah. It would cover the study cost, but not the true cost.
What this, as Greg said, it's whatever numbers they can come up with. I remember when they did a rate study for us, you know, it didn't cover the cost of buying equipment and leasing equipment, all that stuff. It covered, well, you're adding another person, so we'll put that in cost. So it's not this isn't a criticism of Florida Rural Water. It is what it is. A free rate study is a free rate study. And I'm not proposing a free rate study. I'm talking about going out and doing a actual rate study. So you could project those future costs into it.
They're not going to do a deep dive into it. They're going to take the information that you provide, that's what Florida Water does, and then they come up with a study based on that. Now, at the end of the day, as David said, they had some, you know, you're always going to have some level of miscues or where somebody doesn't get charged the right thing. Meters not being serviced on a regular basis. I'm sure Stacy can tell you this as well. You can lose a lot of money over an uncalibrated meter or, you know, where it's not been changed out on a regular basis. The other thing that everybody's guilty of, look at EMS and trash and everything else. I just had a situation where Dixie hadn't changed their rate in 10 years. Well, Fort White hadn't changed theirs on a regular basis. Stuff goes up.
Goes back to what we were saying a while ago. You've got to stay on top of it. You can't do like we did with fire and say,
Yeah.
wait 10 years to do a progressive increase.
Mr. Chair, what I would strongly recommend is when these numbers come on back in, and regardless of how it turns out, I would recommend a complete level of transparency in the effort of moving forward and say, look, guys, these rates cover A, B, and C, and you got a red of D, E, and F. Therefore, on a regular annual, you know, every 2 years, whatever that math might be, we're going to have to increase X amount of dollars if we're ever going to make this in the black. And I think that's the important message to get out there, because if you go out there and establish a rate, like me, I'm somewhat not confused, but I've heard everything you've said, David. I'm sitting there going, okay, y'all did a rate study. You increased your rates, you made a lot of people mad. And very well possibly still might not be in black, is what I think I heard you say. I think it's important to get that out there to make it a little more easy, if you may, and that you can set yourself up for incremental rate increases. Because if you go out there with a significant rate increase of any kind, if you don't explain it real properly, it's going to completely confuse somebody 2 years later. You say, we got to bump up again. And go, what are y'all doing? It's just my opinion. I just think this is a very important exercise.
And I'm gonna tell you what, the customer is a double-edged sword. I get complaints all the time. And Dave, I know David's heard it for years too. I think why can't Fort White get a first store? Why can't Fort White get this? And I tell them all the time. Because we don't have sewer. We don't have sewer. Well, then they want a grocery store and they want this, but they don't want sewer either. You know what I'm saying? It's just- You can't have it both ways, you know what I'm saying?
They want to have the cake and eat it too.
Sure.
I mean, you know.
That's been elected to public.
And Mr. Kirby, and we were talking before, I honestly don't know about the financial situation of the water itself, but just from what I saw with money that the county has helped the city out with, as far as maintenance goes, I don't see how Fort White can sustain very long. I mean, just with the maintenance that the county has helped us with, right? You know, I mean, what was the generator, $20,000? You know, stuff like that. I mean, it adds up.
The problem is the water system was 20-something years old and basically
Unmaintenance.
hadn't had a very good maintenance plan.
I'll say it was unmaintenance.
That replacement work budgeted into the overall.
And they weren't. That's right. That was a low priority for past administration in Fort White and also.
Which we go back to my recommendation of a rate study be done by somebody other than Florida Rural Water. Not that they do a bad job, but I think you want this to be comprehensive.
Yeah, you want a professional firm, I mean, that does, that's what they indicated.
Yeah, that's good. Be quite frank with you. So.
Any other questions? Anybody else have anything to say? I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Thanks to adjourn.